Okay, let me ask, because he's approaching. She's pointed out this.
Thank you. Thank you.
¿Estamos listos ya? Yeah. Okay. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas a la rueda.
Okay, welcome to the press conference after the joint EU-ESA ministerial meeting in Seville. We'll hear from Diana Moran, Minister for Science and Innovation, the Commissioner for the Internal Market and Services, Thierry Breton, Anna Kriesmann, and Joseph Asbachner, who's the Director General of the ESA. They'll be speaking about the conclusions of the meeting. After they have spoken, there'll be time for questions. I'd ask you please to mention your name and who you work for before you ask your question. And just to remind you, the questions you ask have to be linked to the topic of the meeting. So the Minister for Science and Innovation, Diana Moran, has the floor first. Good afternoon. Thank you to all of you for coming along. We've just finished the joint EU-ESA meeting, the aim of which was to further strengthen the cooperation between the two institutions and to strengthen the joint work they're doing. Now, in the meeting we discussed issues which are especially important related to the sustainability of the Copernicus programme and commercialisation. When it comes to sustainability, we said it was necessary to make the most of space activities to ensure that they could help us to move towards our green and sustainability related objectives on land and in space. We need ever more global solutions which can involve the space sector. So we spoke about things which the EU, the ESA and the member states need to take and what they need in order for them to be able to work on a more sustainable future. When it comes to Copernicus, we also spoke about how to increase funding for the Earth observation programme, because that's key for enabling us to monitor climate change and arising emergencies. And then when it comes to commercialisation, we discussed how we could increase the commercial component of space activity, and we talked about how to get the European private sector more involved in the space sector in all regions. And we also spoke about specific models which could be followed to strengthen activities in some areas, notably launches. We also took the opportunity to jointly present, so this is the presidency of the ESA currently held by Germany and the presidency of the Council of the EU currently held by Spain, to jointly present a joint declaration. And we also gave this to the member states, shared it with them, and we hope over the next few weeks they will sign up to this joint declaration. Many member states today already expressed their support. This is a very ambitious joint declaration, focusing on the areas we discussed today, areas which are extremely important when it comes to sustainability, PPPs and access to space. Now, when it comes to sustainability, of course, sustainability of space activity is important because we have to combat climate change. It can help with that, and it can also help with the green transition which the EU wants. So space can be used to push forward the green and digital transition in Europe to ensure we can take effective measures to combat climate change to promote sustainability. That's key. That's mentioned in the joint declaration. We also need to ensure that we are fully committed to the Copernicus programme. We need to work in space to ensure that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions down to zero. And also, when it comes to sustainability in space, we need to ensure that Europe has a leading role when it comes to developing a global sustainable standards framework, and we need to further strengthen Europe's contribution to innovation in the area of space. It's important that we reduce the impact of space activities and that we eliminate space debris, or space waste as it's sometimes called. Now, another point which the declaration stresses on, as I say, it's very ambitious, is the point of the importance of innovation and PPPs. Now, in the declaration, what we've said is that it's necessary to increase commercialisation in the European space ecosystem. It needs to be more dynamic, there need to be more profitable solutions, more innovative ones. We need innovative public procurement, we need support from the public sector, as they are an anchor customer when it comes to services related to infrastructure, space and data. And then a third point, or a third axis of the joint declaration from the two presidencies is the following: access to space. We want to ensure autonomous, reliable, affordable access to space for Europe. Now, in order to get that, we need to quickly agree on a European solution based on regulation for launch services, traditional ones and new ones. So it needs to be reliable, affordable, and it needs to be possible for people to access it from the existing infrastructure. So, as I said, this is a joint declaration from the two presidencies, the German presidency of the ESA and the Spanish presidency, the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. And this was discussed in the meeting between the ESA and the EU. Commissioner Thierry Breton, you have the floor.
Merci, Dana. Merci, Madame la.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Following the informal council of this morning, we had a joint session with the European Space Agency, and on behalf of the European Commission, I was able to share three main messages. Firstly, commercializing space activities is a priority. We know that this is a sector which is increasingly competitive with non-European actors in particular. So we have to change our approach towards a new risk culture. We also have to open up access to risk capital for a sector which is by its nature high risk, and for startups in particular. For startups, we have 1.2 billion euro to support 150 startups in 2023. That will continue. And as the Minister has just pointed out, we also want to open up our public procurement markets. We are doing that with IRIS. We also want to speed up innovation with the in-orbit validation program. I would just like to say, as I mentioned this morning, ESA's support for a cargo service is a very positive development. This shows what we need to be doing as of now. This is the same principle that applies to IRIS Squared and is quite new and innovative. Secondly, regarding the sustainability of our space activities, this is now of key importance. Thanks to Copernicus, Europe has a world-class space infrastructure, taking the pulse of the planet, as it were. We want to further strengthen the use of Copernicus. IRIS Squared will be sustainable by design with deorbiting possibilities, for example. We also want to put in place a space law which will set clear rules in terms of sustainability. For example, a deorbiting strategy, promoting anti-collision services. This is part of a single market approach for all the key players in space in Europe. The third point concerns relationship between the European Union and ESA, which should be further strengthened and developed. We have set the basis for new forms of cooperation on Galileo, Copernicus, and IRIS Squared. I would like to draw attention to two particular developments which will be very important and which have to be taken on board. Firstly, paying more attention to defense and security needs in our space projects. That can only be done with all 27 member states. So we have to take full account of this aspect. And secondly, as regards the launchers crisis, this requires a new political, economic and practical approach, less focus on geo return, more openness to industry, aggregating demand and having a clear European preference. So these are the key points for me of our meeting this morning.
Now the President of the Ministerial level, Anna Christmas, has the floor.
From my side, as a chair for the ESA, as Germany is right now in the presidency of ESA, I'm just think we look back on 2 very successful days of Space Summit, and I want to thank the Spanish presidency for organizing everything, and it was really good to prepare it together, and having the presidency declaration, the 2 of us, I think they are mentioning very important points that have been also discussed during the meetings in a very European spirit and in a very joint spirit also today of ESA and the European Union. I think that is the way to go. Europe can only be a strong player on a global scale in space if we really closely work together as member states, but also as ESA and European Union, and that was a clear and ambitious signal here from Sevilla today. And let me maybe mention 3 points in particular that were really key to the discussions that we have. The first one is using space for the green transition. Space data are very important to solving all the challenges that we have around the climate crisis. In particular, Copernicus as a flagship program of Europe plays a key role here, and it was mentioned that it's a good development that UK is now again part of the program. I think that is positive, and that also for the future it will be important to have a strong Copernicus program that offers a lot of Earth observation data that can be used by, of course, research and science, but also by startups, SMEs, and the private sector to have also a commercial idea of using these kind of space data. And also part of the sustainable space was the question of space debris. There was really a strong vote for that Europe can be an example for sustainable space and having clear rules how to avoid space debris in future, but also for having a look at technologies to remove space debris to make it sustainable for the next decades. A second aspect I'd like to mention after the green transition is the question of commercialization. It was very clear in the meetings that we together see this as a very important path to future, that we open our programs up really to private companies, that we make it easy to have them involved into procurement processes, and that the public side is strong as an anchor customer, and therefore fosters private investments into the space sector. And I think we made already a huge step to going this path yesterday with the ESA meeting, where we started these kind of programs for the launcher sector. So exactly what the Commissioner was saying, that we need a paradigm shift for the development of launchers in Europe. And yesterday there was a big step for that with the European Launcher Challenge that we decided in the ESA meeting, and also the mentioned cargo for the ISS is also an example where we already now immediately go this path to more commercialization, and I think that is really an important signal. Europe is ambitious and being competitive in the space sector, and that is very important for our sovereignty, our security, and for saving our planet. And let me just mention a last point that was also raised by many in the discussion, that it's also important that we explain to the people of Europe, to the society, why it is so important that we have these kind of space summits, that we are so ambitious in being an active player in the space sector, because it's for our economy very important. It's because it's for saving our planet very important. Often space seems to be very far away for people on our planet, but in fact it's very important for our daily lives, and that is something that we all should also be engaged in explaining and showing to everyone. And I think also for that the Space Summit was a great success. So thank you, and it was a pleasure of chairing this together with Spain.
Finalmente tiene la palabra.
Thank you. And lastly, Director General of the ESA, Joseph Asbacher.
Thank you. Also from my side, and I'd like first really to thank the Spanish hosts for having us here in Sevilla. Sevilla has been a major success in space. In fact, those of you who remember the ESA meeting, there was a ministerial conference here in 2019. Yesterday and today we had the Space Summit, the second Space Summit of Europe. The first one was in February last year in Toulouse, the second one here in Sevilla. And this is a major milestone on where and what Europe is doing in the future and what we have decided. As already recalled by the chairs of this meeting, we have made very important decisions. Yesterday at the ESA Council meeting, the member states of ESA have really made decisions which are, I would call it, a paradigm shift or a game changer of how we do space in the future. On the first part, of course, what was mentioned is the use of space for sustainability, for climate change, for zero debris, as it was explained. The second one is really to change course on launches. On launches, this has been a big crisis, and you have all heard about the launcher crisis, which I have spoken out very clearly in the past few months, almost years, and we have a difficult situation today. But yesterday, the ESA member states have responded to this crisis, have made decisions on one side to guarantee access to space for Europe. For Europe means for everyone, for our customers, the European Commission, which is the largest customer we have in Europe, but also our own satellites of ESA, EUMETSAT, national institutions and the commercial sector. And there we have guaranteed the access to space through support mechanisms which we have put in place and which the ESA member states have decided. And this was, I can tell you also from a personal point of view, a big relief, because we have negotiated very hard with all the 22 member states and reached this consensus yesterday. And this is a big, big step which we should not undervalue. Number two, we have also decided to completely change the way the future launcher will be defined. The next launcher after Ariane 6 and Vega C will be defined, will be developed through a competition where industry has the lead. Industry will propose their best offer with the way they want to do it, and we as ESA, the European Commission and other institutions will be a customer, an anchor customer, where we buy this launch service. And this is something that happened across the Atlantic in the United States as a mechanism how it works. Our ESA member states have decided also to implement something similar. It's not the same, but something similar to make sure that we get a very competitive launcher in the future. Of course, this takes some time, but this is a very important milestone. And also on exploration. Exploration is such an important topic from many perspectives, from geopolitical perspective, innovation, keeping talent in Europe. Anna was mentioning the inspiration for the youth and communication to the general public. We need inspiration, we need dreams again, and we would like to create dreams in Europe through space. And one of the first steps we did is to agree, this is the member states of ESA, to agree on a first phase to develop a cargo vehicle. That means a cargo vehicle that goes up to the space station, brings a few tons to the space station, is docking on the space station and bringing back again cargo to the Earth's surface, which means technology to bring the cargo up to the space station, docking and re-entry. And this we do not have today. And this will be a new development, again, developed through a challenge. And we would like that this challenge requires from us as a customer that this docking takes place by 2028. And that is very ambitious, very fast for Europe. We have got the first funding until the next ministerial. We will ask through a program proposal the member states for the second phase, but this is a big step which we have done here. And this is, again, a paradigm shift that we have managed here. So I'm very grateful to the member states of ESA. I'm very grateful to the European Commission for the very strong, very solid cooperation which we have since 30 years on many domains. And I can only say that this is a wonderful day for space in Europe here in Sevilla.
Abrimos el turno de preguntas.
Okay, the floor is open now for questions. Just to remind you, please provide your name and say who you work for before you ask your question. Thank you.
¿No hay preguntas?
No questions? Okay, well, in that case... Oh, sorry, there is a question. Apologies.
Pierre Célérier with AFP. Question for Mr. Aschbacher. Is there any plan to formalize discussions about the industrial return coefficient in the next ESA meeting? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, geo-return, or industrial return as it is called, is a mechanism that is in place since the beginning of ESA. And I should say that this mechanism has created one of the most competitive industries in the world. Our European space industry is very competitive and is delivering very good value for money, despite the fact that the geo-return requires access to industry from different countries. But having said that, of course, today we have a new situation with much more commercialization, as was mentioned before. And yes, ESA is discussing with its member state the geo-return evolution, how this can be done. I cannot preempt this discussion, but this is something that we do together with our member states. And yes, the discussion has started, and we are in the midst of this process.
3 quick questions, one of which just follows on from what my colleague asked. Thierry Breton has said twice today there should be less geo-return. I just wanted to clarify in terms of timeline for that process you just talked about, Joseph. Are you expecting that to be a topic for 2025 ministerial? That will be a decision about how to evolve geo-return?
Yeah. No, can be very brief. The discussion is already ongoing in what we call the Industrial Policy Committee in ESA. There are meetings actually coming up in the November timeframe, but this is tabled again. We hope, of course, this all depends on the decisions by member states, that we get clear guidance from the member states by, I would say, mid-next year, so we have a good basis to prepare the Ministerial 25.
Okay, thank you. And just my 2 further questions. It's one for Mr. Breton, one for you again. Just on the topic of the SpaceX launches, Mr. Breton, do you have a cost for how much the European Commission has contracted out to SpaceX for those 2 launches next year that we discussed? And to you, Joseph, just to infer from what everybody, I think, has said about this paradigm shift and the change in how Europe does business in this industry, would it be fair to say there will not be an Ariane 7 program in any way like we've seen this done before? Is that fair to say? Thanks.
For the first question, the contract is worth 180 million euros.
Okay. On the next launcher, yes, the future heavy launcher, of course, this takes some time, as you can imagine, will be developed in a different way, completely different, through a competitive process, and it is not following the models of Ariane 6, Ariane 5, Ariane 4, Ariane 3. So yes, this is a clear paradigm shift of how we develop the future launcher for Europe.
¿Alguna cuestión más?
Any other questions? Any more questions? No?
Vale, pues damos por finalizado.
Okay, in that case, the press conference is concluded. Thank you very much.